I see you, I appreciate you, and I'm thankful you subscribe and keep showing up. This space is built on your insights. Leave your thoughts and lessons below. Now, cue the tension, cue the truth, let's get into it. Before the story starts, I want you to notice the exact wording in that sentence. Don't come over, my ex is staying here and I don't want drama. That is not a request for peace. That is a request for your absence. If someone can casually rearrange your place in their life to make room for a past relationship, the red flag is not the ex. It is the comfort they have with sidelining you. The decision point is simple. Do you negotiate your dignity or do you protect it? My wife, Nia, said like she was reminding me to grab milk. Don't come over. My ex is staying here and I don't want drama. I was sitting in my work truck outside a shuttered duplex in Milwaukee, clipboard on my lap, breath fogging the windshield. I looked at the cracked steering wheel cover I'd been meaning to replace and felt my chest go oddly quiet. I said, okay. Not loud, not sharp, just a clean word. Then I put the truck in drive and didn't head toward our apartment. I headed away from it. If you've ever had someone try to push you out of your own relationship and call it peace, you're going to want to hear what I did next, because it wasn't loud, it wasn't messy, and it changed everything. If you want more stories with real consequences and real emotions, like share and subscribe, and tell me in the comments, would you have stayed, or would you have left that night? I'm Darius, 31, a city building inspector, meaning I spend my days noticing what's crooked before it falls. That's the irony I didn't appreciate until later. Nia was 29, a medical billing coordinator with a love for order that showed up in little rituals. Spice jars labeled in neat block letters, towels folded into perfect thirds, her planner color-coded 2 months ahead. We'd been married 8 months. Not long enough to get bored, but long enough to believe we were settled. We lived in a third-floor walk-up near Washington Park, above a quiet older couple who watered their porch plants every morning. The night she said it, I was supposed to bring dinner. Fridays were our thing. Fish fry from a corner place called Harold's that smelled like hot oil and lemon wedges. We'd eat on the couch, feet tucked under us, her laughing at whatever documentary she'd picked. I already had the paper bag on the passenger seat, grease spots blooming through. When she called, I expected a "where are you?" Instead, I got that sentence. Her ex staying here, like it was weather. I kept my voice even. Okay. My hand was shaking on the gear shift. The first lie I told myself was that there was a reasonable explanation I just hadn't heard yet. A family emergency, a broken furnace, a storm, something that required a spare couch. Nothing more. But her tone did not carry urgency. It carried convenience. She didn't ask where I would go. She didn't offer to meet outside. She didn't say, I'm sorry. She said, I don't want drama. As if my presence, my marriage, my key to the door, those were the dramatic elements. I parked under a street lamp and stared at the fish fry bag until it cooled into sadness. I didn't always respond to shock with silence, but I learned when I was younger. My father used to turn everything into a debate you could never win. So I grew into a man who chooses the cleanest exit over the loudest argument. That was my flaw and my shield. Nia knew it, too. She called me steady, like that meant I wouldn't wobble no matter what she said on me. I love her for how she brought structure to my life. I collect old radios, wooden cabinets, warm dials, patient restoration. She said I had a tinkerer's heart. I believed her. We met at my aunt's church fundraiser in Southside Chicago 2 summers ago, back when Nia still lived there. I was visiting for a weekend, helping set up folding tables and putting price labels on donated cakes. Nia arrived late in a navy dress, hair wrapped in a silk scarf, carrying an aluminum tray of lemon bars like it was sacred. She apologized to everybody and meant it. When I offered to take the tray, she said, please don't tilt it. I am proud of those. That made me smile. Later, she listened, really listened, when I explained how I rewired a 1950 Zenith radio to stop the hum. Most people tune out. Long distance came first. Milwaukee to Chicago. 94 every other weekend. Stopping for gas and beef jerky at the same travel plaza. She'd meet me at her building door with her arms already open. She had this habit of touching the center of my chest with 2 fingers when she hugged me, like she was checking I was real. When she moved up to Milwaukee for a better job, it felt like a shared victory. We signed a lease together, celebrated with takeout Thai and cheap champagne. She set her planner on the counter and wrote New Home Day in careful capitals. Devin, the ex, was a name I heard early, but not like a threat, more like an old file kept in a drawer. Nia described him as a lot. She said they dated through her 20s, on and off, always circling back. We were good at apologizing, she told me once, but not good at changing. She said the last breakup stuck because she got tired of feeling like her life was a waiting room for his moods. I respected that kind of honesty. I didn't ask for details. I figured the past was the past, and I wasn't trying to compete with history. That was decision number one. I chose trust over interrogation. The first time Devin's presence nudged into our marriage was a Tuesday night in February. Nia was making chicken soup, stirring slowly, eyes tired. Her phone buzzed, and she sighed like it was homework. Devin, she said, and I thought she meant it like spam call. She stepped into the bedroom to answer. When she came out, she said he'd been laid off and was spiraling. She poured soup into 2 bowls and tried to smile. He just needed someone to tell him to breathe, she said. I said, okay. My steady voice again. I figured compassion was harmless. I didn't see the open door it created. In March, Devin started popping up in small ways, little mentions like dust you keep wiping and it keeps returning. Devin liked that movie too. Devin used to go to that diner. Devin thinks your radio hobby is cool. That last one irritated me more than it should have. I didn't like him having an opinion on me. Still, I stayed quiet. I wanted to be the kind of husband who wasn't threatened by a ghost. Nia seemed grateful for my calm. She'd squeeze my hand in the car and say, "Thank you for not being dramatic." I mistook that for appreciation. By April, the calls got later. Not always, but often enough to shift the air in the room. We'd be brushing our teeth, and her phone would light up on the counter. She'd glance at it, lips pressed together, then pick it up like it had a job to do. Sometimes she'd answer in front of me, voice low, saying things like, "Devin, I can't fix this for you," and I would feel almost proud of her boundaries. Other times, she'd step on the back stairwell and close the door. I would hear only muffled sounds, and my mind would fill in the rest. I tried to address it once, gently, the way you approach a loose step on a porch. We were at a diner off on Dulac Avenue, sharing pancakes, the kind with crispy edges. I said, "Is he okay?" I noticed he calls a lot. Nia stared at her coffee like the answer lived at the bottom. "He's not okay," she admitted. "He's sleeping in his car sometimes. He's embarrassed." I felt sympathy, real sympathy. I also felt something else. The familiar pull of being asked to make room. She touched my wrist. "I'm not going back," she said quickly, like she'd heard the question I didn't ask. Then came the money. It wasn't a huge amount at first, but it wasn't nothing. Nia mentioned she'd sent Devin $200 for gas and food. She said it like a confession and a dare. I asked, "Did he ask you or did you offer?" She frowned. "Does it matter?" It did, but I didn't press. That was decision number 2. I chose harmony over insisting on an uncomfortable truth. My own parents taught me what money fights can do to a household. I hated them. So I swallowed my concern and told myself it was temporary kindness, not an emotional mortgage. A week later, I noticed she had hidden our shared checkbook behind the cereal boxes. I only saw it because I was looking for oatmeal. When I held it up, she snatched it with an embarrassed laugh. "I'm reorganizing," she said. The word reorganizing should not feel like a lie, but it did. I watched her walk it back to the cabinet, placing it somewhere I couldn't see. That night, I lay awake counting the ceiling cracks. In my line of work, hiding paperwork is a sign someone knows there's a problem. I told myself I was being paranoid. Paranoia, I thought, is what jealous men use to justify controlling behavior. I didn't want to be that man. The first time I saw Devin in person after we married was at a Saturday barbershop on North Avenue. I'd gone to see Mr. Leon, who's been cutting hair for half the neighborhood since I was a teenager. I was in the chair, cape around my neck, when Devin walked in. He was taller than I expected, shoulders tight, eyes alert like he'd been awake too long. He nodded at me like we were co-workers. "Darius, right?" he said. I said yes. He smiled, but it didn't reach his face. "You got a good woman," he said. It sounded like ownership, not praise. After he left, Mr. Leon clicked his tongue and said, "That one got storms in him." I asked how he knew. Mr. Leon shrugged. Men who can't sit still got something chasing them. I laughed politely, but it stuck. Later, I told Nia I'd seen Devin. She froze for half a second, just enough for me to notice. "He didn't say anything weird, did he?" she asked. I said no. She looked relieved and then annoyed at herself for being relieved. That night, she cleaned the kitchen aggressively, wiping already clean counters. I offered to help. She said, "Just let me do it." Her control was slipping, and she was gripping harder. The summer brought humidity and more contact. Devin started showing up on her lunch breaks, just to talk. She claimed they met in public places, coffee shop, park bench, a food court downtown. Always neutral, always safe. I wanted to believe her. But I also noticed she started wearing lipstick more often on days she met him, a soft berry color she rarely used at home. When I asked about it, she said, "It's in my bag. I'm trying to look put together at work." That made sense. It also made my stomach twist. I hate how suspicion makes ordinary things feel dirty. In July, on our anniversary weekend, we went to the Milwaukee Riverwalk and ate custard near the water. The air smelled like sunscreen and algae. Nia leaned her head on my shoulder and said, "We're doing good." I wanted to take that sentence and frame it. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced down, and her smile tightened like a drawstring. I saw Devin's name on the screen because she didn't angle it away fast enough. She silenced it, then tried to keep talking, but her eyes were somewhere else. That was when I felt the first honest thought I'd been avoiding. I might already be sharing my wife. I didn't confront her then. I chose the ice cream, the river, the illusion. That was decision number 3. I chose to postpone reality because I was afraid of what it would cost. I told myself, it's our anniversary. Don't ruin it. But the truth is, I didn't want to hear her defend him with that patient voice she used when she thought I was being unreasonable. I didn't want to become the husband who polices her phone. So I laughed at her joke about seagulls stealing fries and pretended her silence wasn't a third person sitting with us. The first time she asked me to be flexible was in August, when Devin needed to drop something off. She said he had boxes of her old college books she left at his place years ago. He wants to return them, she explained. He's trying to be respectful. I offered to be there. Nia said, "It's fine, Darius." That word, fine, had become her shield. I was at work when she texted. He came by. It was quick. When I got home, there were no boxes. I asked where they were. She blinked, then said, "I told him never mind. I don't need them." The story had holes, and she was hoping I wouldn't look. In September, my mother came up from Gary for a weekend visit. My mother is warm but observant in a way that makes you sit up straighter. She watches how people move in a room. At dinner, spaghetti, garlic bread, Nia's salad placed precisely in a glass bowl, my mother asked Nia about work. Nia answered politely but kept checking her phone, face tightening and relaxing like she was reading something she couldn't say out loud. After my mother went to the bathroom, she whispered to me, "Who has your wife distracted like that?" I didn't know how to answer. I said, "Work stuff." My mother raised an eyebrow and let it go. She didn't believe me. That night, after my mother fell asleep on our couch, I finally asked Nia directly, "Are you still emotionally involved with Devin?" I tried to keep my voice gentle, like I was asking about a headache. Nia's face hardened. "No," she said immediately. "Too fast. Then why is he in your day like this?" I asked. She crossed her arms. "Because I'm not heartless. He's struggling. He doesn't have family like I do." I said, "You have a husband. You have a home. You have me." She stared at me as if that was an accusation. "I'm allowed to care about someone," she snapped. I said, "Caring isn't the problem. The priority is..." She walked away without answering. The next day, my mother pulled me aside. while Nia was in the shower. "Baby," she said, voice soft, "don't let kindness turn you into furniture." I laughed because it sounded dramatic, but her eyes weren't joking. "Furniture?" I asked. "People move around when it's convenient," she said. "If she can push you aside once, she'll do it again." I wanted to argue. I wanted to defend my marriage. Instead, I said, "We're working through it." My mother squeezed my cheek the way she did when I was little, a gesture that felt like both love and pity. It bothered me more than any insult could have. October arrived with cold wind and early sunsets. Nia became both more affectionate and more distant, depending on the day. Some evenings she'd cling to me, asking about my inspections, rubbing my shoulders, kissing my forehead like she was trying to prove something to herself. Other days she'd be curt, irritated by small things. The way I left my boots by the door, how I rinsed dishes, how loud the television was. It felt like she was carrying a separate argument in her head and using me as the nearest target. When I asked what was wrong, she'd say, "Nothing. I'm tired." The word tired started sounding like another name for guilt. The incident that changed the temperature happened at a community meeting in a school gym. I'd gone for work, building code updates, resin complaints, the usual. Nia came to support me, sitting in the back with a notebook. Halfway through, her phone buzzed, and she stood up quickly, slipping out the side door. When I finished my presentation, I found her outside by the vending machines, speaking into her phone in a low, urgent voice. "Devin, stop," she said. "You can't keep doing this." When she saw me, she ended the call so fast her thumbs shook. "Everything okay?" I asked. She said yes. Her eyes said no. That night, she admitted Devin had moved back to Milwaukee temporarily. "He's staying with a friend," she said. "He's trying to get on his feet." I asked why she hadn't told me earlier. She shrugged like it didn't matter. "I didn't want you to overreact." That sentence landed heavy. Overreact. Like my feelings were a predictable inconvenience. I said, "I need honesty from you, Nia." She stared at me with a mix of exhaustion and defiance. "You want honesty?" she said. "Sometimes you make it hard to tell you things because you go quiet and look at me like I'm a problem." I felt my face heat. My silence, my steadiness, now it was a weapon against me. We tried counseling after that. 2 sessions at a small office near downtown, the waiting room smelling like peppermint tea and old books. The therapist, Dr. Holloway, asked us to describe conflict patterns. Nia said he withdraws. I said she rearranges reality. Dr. Holloway asked what I meant. I explained how Nia would present decisions as already made and call my discomfort drama. Nia rolled her eyes, then caught herself and apologized. For a moment, I felt hope. Then Dr. Holloway asked about Devin. Nia's posture stiffened as if the chair had grown thorns. "He's not part of our marriage," she insisted. The lie was polished, practiced. 2 weeks later, Dr. Holloway suggested a boundary plan. Limited contact with Devin, transparency about calls, no money transfers, no private meetings. Nia nodded, took notes, and promised she could do it. On the drive home, she was quiet. At a red light, she said, "I feel like I'm being treated like I'm doing something wrong when I'm just trying to be decent." I said, "Decent doesn't require secrecy." She stared out the window. "You don't understand what it's like to be someone's whole support system," she whispered. I want to say, "That's the point, you shouldn't be." But I didn't. I was afraid of pushing her into his arms. I didn't realize she was already leaning. In early November, my cousin hosted a family dinner. Collard greens, baked chicken, the smell of nutmeg from sweet potato pie. Nia came with me, smiling, helping clear plates, complimenting everybody's cooking. She looked like the wife I married, present, warm, grounded. Then she stepped outside to take a call. I watched her through the window, shoulders hunched against the cold, pacing the porch. When she came back in, her eyes were glassy. "We need to go," she whispered. In the car, she said Devin had been in a bad place and threatened to do something reckless if she didn't help. I told her we should call someone as family, a crisis line, anybody trained. Nia snapped, "You don't get it. That was decision number 4. I chose not to argue because the situation sounded serious and I didn't want to be cruel. I drove home in silence, feeling replaced by urgency. The next morning, I found an overnight bag by our front door. Toiletries, extra socks, Nia's favorite lavender lotion. I asked where she was going. She hesitated, then said she was helping a friend for a couple days. I asked which friend. She stared at me too long. Devin, she said finally. The air felt thin. Helping how? I asked. He needs a stable place for a minute, she replied. I said, not here. Nia's jaw tightened. I'm not bringing him here, she said, like she was reassuring me. I'm meeting him somewhere. That sounded worse. It sounded like a separate life. I told her, this isn't sustainable. She said, I'm doing what I have to do. Then she left, pulling the door gently, as if quietness could soften betrayal. For 2 days, she was gone. She texted short updates. Busy, talk later, I'm okay. I went to work, inspected roofs and basements, wrote citations, listened to residents complain about peeling paint. I felt like an actor performing normal life, while my real life dangled off screen. At night, I cooked for one and ate at the kitchen table, looking at the second chair like it had insulted me. I slept in the center of the bed and still felt alone. I kept remembering my mother's furniture comment. I started to see myself in that image, moved, shifted, placed wherever there was space. On the 3rd day, Nia came home with her face set in a calm that scared me. She walked straight to the kitchen, rinsed her hands, and started wiping down the counter, cleaning as a way to avoid talking. I said, we need to talk. She didn't stop wiping. I know, she said. Then she turned, leaned against the cabinet, and said, Devin is coming to stay here for a bit. I felt my throat tighten. No, I said, we talked about boundaries. Nia sighed like I was a child refusing medicine. He has nowhere else, she said, and I can't let him be out there. I said, you can help him without moving him into our home. She looked at me with irritation and something like fear. You always make it sound so simple. That evening, I went to Mr. Leon's barbershop again, not for a haircut, but because it was one place where I could sit and hear ordinary conversation. Men argued about basketball, tease each other about gray hairs, laugh loud enough to shake the windows. Mr. Leon glanced at me in the mirror and said, you look like you lost something. I said, maybe I did. He didn't push. He just handed me a bottle of water and said, drink, think. I sat there watching hair fall to the floor, feeling foolish for envying something so clean. One man leaving, another man entering. No confusion about who belonged in the chair. When I got home, Nia had rearranged the living room. Our couch was pulled out from the wall. A blanket and pillow were placed at one end like a stage photo. So he can sleep there, she said quickly, like that should settle it. I asked when he was coming. Tomorrow, she said. I said, I'm not comfortable with this. She exhaled sharply. You're acting like I'm inviting him here for fun, she snapped. I said, then why does it feel like you're preparing for him more carefully than you prepare for us? Her eyes flashed. Because you're going to make it tense, she said. That's why. My stomach dropped. Somehow, my reaction was a threat, not his presence. The next morning, I called my brother, Terrence, who lived in a duplex in Sherman Park with his wife and their toddler. Terrence is the kind of man who speaks slowly because he chooses his words like tools. I told him what was happening. He was quiet for a long moment, then said, What do you want to do? That question cut through my fog. I realized I'd been reacting, not deciding. I don't know. I admitted, I want my wife to choose our marriage. Terrence said, You can't pull a choice out of someone. You can only decide what you tolerate. Then he added, You have my couch. Hearing that made my eyes sting. Support can feel like grief. That afternoon, Nia called me while I was in my truck. Her voice was calm, almost light. Don't come over, she said. Devin is staying here, and I don't want drama. She didn't say our home. She said here, like it belonged to her alone at that moment. I swallowed. Okay, I replied. I heard her exhale with relief, the way someone relaxes after moving an obstacle. The call ended, and I sat there listening to the tick of my engine cooling. That relief in her breath did something to me. It made the situation plain. If my absence was her peace, then my presence had already become optional. I drove to Terrence's without turning back. The first night on Terrence's couch, I didn't cry. I didn't rant. I stared at the ceiling fan and listened to the house settle. Terrence's toddler woke once, fussed, then quieted. That small domestic sound, normal family noise, hurt more than shouting would have. Around midnight, I opened my phone and looked at Nia's contact photo. She was smiling in it, eyes bright, hair pulled back, my hand visible on her shoulder. I hovered over the message thread. I could have typed, "This is unacceptable." I could have demanded she send Devin away. I could have begged. Instead, I did the one thing I knew I could control. I blocked her number. I blocked her on every app. I didn't do it as punishment. I did it like closing a door during a storm so the house doesn't flood. The next morning, I went to work like nothing had happened. There's a particular humiliation in performing professionalism while your private life collapses. I walked through a condemned property with flashlight, noted water damage, and wrote up violations with steady handwriting. I kept thinking about Nia's casual tone, how easy it was for her to ask me to vanish. At lunch, I sat in my truck and called our landlord. I asked what it would take to remove my name from the lease. He said both tenants had to sign. I asked him to email the documents to Nia. Then I called our bank and separated my direct deposit from our joint bills account. I wasn't being dramatic. I was undergoing surgery. A marriage had been treated like a flexible arrangement. I was correcting the paperwork to match the truth. Terrence asked me that evening if I wanted to talk. We sat at his kitchen table while his wife washed bottles at the sink. The kitchen smelled like dish soap and cinnamon candles. Terrence didn't say, "I told you so." He said, "What are you feeling?" I wanted to say anger, but the honest answer was shame. Shame that I had ignored so many small alarms because I wanted to be seen as secure. Shame that my wife's ex had become a third vote in our household without ever paying rent. I told Terrence, "I feel like I trained myself to accept being second." Terrence nodded slowly. "Then untrain it," he said. It was simple, not easy. Days passed and weeks. Nia didn't reach me directly because she couldn't. She reached out through other people like wind, trying to get through cracks. My cousin messaged, "Nia's worried. She says you disappeared." A friend from our couples group texted, "She wants to talk. She says Devin only stayed a few nights." That detail, "only a few nights," was offered like a discount. I didn't respond. I focused on routines because routines were something I could keep. I woke early, ran along the park trail with my breath burning in the cold, then went to work. In the evenings, I sat with Terrence's toddler and built block towers, watching them fall, watching us rebuild. It was weirdly comforting. On Thanksgiving, I ate at Terrence's house. His wife made macaroni and cheese with a crust that cracked under the spoon. Terrence's neighbor brought a peach cobbler. A football game murmured in the background. Everyone avoided mentioning Nia until later, when Terrence's wife asked gently, "Has she tried to apologize?" I said, "Apology isn't the issue." I saw their faces shift, waiting for me to explain. I said, "She didn't just invite him. She asked me to make myself scarce, so he could feel comfortable." The room went quiet. Terrence's wife shook her head slowly. "That's not confusion," she said. "That's a decision." Hearing someone else say it made my chest loosen. It validated the part of me that had been called dramatic for having boundaries. In early December, Nia emailed me from a work account I didn't know. The subject line was, "Please." I stared at it for a long time. I could have deleted it. I could have forwarded it to Terrence and let him read it like a filter. Instead, I opened it, decision number 5. I needed to know whether she understood what she had done. The email was long, carefully written, full of phrases like, "I never meant to hurt you," and "I was overwhelmed." She wrote that Devin had been unstable, and she felt responsible because she had once promised she'd never abandon him. That line stopped me. A promise in the past had more weight than vows made 8 months ago. She ended with, "Can we talk like adults?" I closed the email and didn't reply. Adult talk requires adult accountability, not adult phrasing. 2 days later, she called from an unknown number. I answered without thinking, the way you sometimes answer a door knock before remembering you're not expecting anyone. "Darius," she said, voice soft, as if softness could rewind time. I didn't say her name. She kept going. "I need you to stop doing this. I need you to come home. Devin is gone." I laughed once. Quiet, surprised. "Devin is gone," I repeated. "So now it's safe for me to exist again?" She inhaled sharply. "That's not what I meant." I said, "It is exactly what you meant. You just don't like hearing it." She started crying, and I felt the old instinct to comfort her. I ignored it. Comfort was how I kept getting moved. "We're done," I said. She said, "You're being cruel." I said, "No, I'm being clear." Then I hung up and blocked that number too. The divorce process wasn't cinematic. It was paperwork and waiting rooms and quiet humiliation. Nia contested at first, not because she wanted to fight, but because she wanted to control the story. She told people I had ghosted her after a misunderstanding. She told one mutual friend that I was emotionally unavailable. That part had truth in it, which made it sting. I am the kind of man who turns his feelings into silence because he thinks silence is maturity. But silence is also a hiding place. I had hidden from confrontation for too long. This time, I didn't hide from my decision. When my lawyer asked if I wanted to attempt reconciliation, I said no. My voice didn't shake. In January, I finally went back to the apartment to retrieve the last of my things. I didn't go alone. Terrence came with me. The hallway smelled like someone's fried onions. We climbed the stairs, and I heard music through the walls. Some neighbor's gospel playlist. Nia wasn't home. She had left a key under the mat, probably hoping I'd see it as an invitation. Inside, everything looked the same but felt staged, like a set after the actors leave. My radio workbench in the corner was cleared. My soldering iron was gone. My blue ceramic bowl from my grandmother, one of the only items I was sentimental about, was on the counter, filled with oranges like a peace offering. I didn't touch it. I packed my tools, my clothes, and the framed photo of my late uncle. Then I walked out and left the key on the kitchen table. I didn't slam the door. I didn't need to. The next month, I rented a small studio on the east side, near a bookstore that stayed open late. The place smelled faintly like paint and new carpet. I furnished it slowly. A second-hand desk, a clean couch, a lamp with warm light. I set up my radio repair station near the window and started working again, restoring something broken without it lying to me. On Sundays, I found a black church in the neighborhood where people sang like they meant it, and the pastor talked about honesty without theatrics. After service, there was coffee and pound cake. No one knew my story. I liked that. I liked being just a man drinking coffee, not a headline in a marriage. In late February, I met Mariah at that bookstore. She was browsing the history section, hair in a low bun, glasses slipping down her nose as she read a blurb. I recognized the book because my father used to keep it on his shelf. I said, "That one will make you mad by chapter 3. She smiled, surprised, and asked why. We talked for 15 minutes between shelves, not flirting like teenagers, just honest conversation. Mariah was a physical therapist, steady in her own way, and she spoke with directness that felt like fresh air. We got coffee across the street. She asked about my ring, because I still wore it sometimes out of habit. I told her I was recently separated. She didn't pry. She said, "I'm sorry. That's heavy." Then she changed the subject like she respected my pace. Nia didn't like losing access. She started showing up in places she thought I might be. Once, I saw her car outside the grocery store near my studio. I turned around and went to a different store, walking the aisles with my hood up, like I was hiding from the weather. Another time, she appeared after church service, standing near the parking lot with her coat pulled tight, eyes searching. I felt my stomach drop. Not because I missed her, but because she still believed proximity could override consent. She stepped toward me. "Darius, please," she said. I kept walking. My hands were shaking, but my feet didn't stop. Boundaries aren't just words. They're actions you repeat until they become true. The only time I spoke to her again was accidental. It happened at a small diner near my old work route, where I'd stopped for coffee after an inspection. The place smelled like bacon and burnt toast. I heard her voice behind me. "Darius?" I turned. Nia looked thinner. Her eyes had that tired shine people get when they've been negotiating with regret. "I didn't understand," she said quietly. "I thought you'd come back." I took a slow breath. "That's the problem," I said. "You thought okay, meant I'd wait my turn." She blinked hard. "I was trying to prevent drama," she whispered. I said, "You prevented accountability. There's a difference." She reached into her purse and pulled out my grandmother's blue bowl, wrapped in a towel, like she'd been carrying around as proof she still knew me. "You forgot this," she said. I didn't take it. I said, "Keep it or donate it, but don't use it to hold a conversation hostage." Then I paid my check and walked out, leaving my coffee half full. If you made it to this point, you understand the real ending wasn't divorce paperwork. It was the moment I stopped letting her rewrite the story. If that hit you, like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this. And comment, understood, if you believe walking away calmly is sometimes the strongest move, because I'm dropping another story soon where the truth comes out even uglier. I went home that night and sat on my studio floor, back against the couch, staring at the blank wall. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired in a clean way, like muscles after a long run. I thought about all the points where I could have chosen differently, where I could have demanded details sooner, where I could have yelled, where I could have begged for reassurance. I thought about how I always wanted to be the steady man, and how steadiness can turn into self-erasure if you don't guard it. Then I stood up, washed the dishes, and prepared for the next day. Because leaving wasn't the end of pain. It was the beginning of peace that required maintenance. And I was finally willing to do the work. If you take anything from Darius and Nia's story, take this. A boundary you don't enforce becomes a permission slip. Notice how Nia's language kept shrinking the marriage. "Don't come over. I don't want drama. Devin is gone." As if Darius existed only when convenient. Darius made two hard choices. Blocking her before she could reframe as okay, and refusing the blue bowl as a bargaining chip. Closure isn't a conversation someone demands. Sometimes closure is you walking out calmly and staying out. The end.